Hello, and welcome everyone to Literature Review. And I am so glad to be here with my following panel here. So I'm going to go ahead and start introducing everyone one by one. And if you guys have any questions about the novel we're reviewing or anything you want to share that you think is interesting, go ahead and share it in the chat. So first, I'm going to bring in Teresa. Miss Martin Muses, hello.
Hi there, it's great to be on. I am so excited about this. Vision for the future. Luke and Mara forever.
Yeah, Luke and Mara forever. I know we had such a good time talking about Specter of the Past for the last review. So I am glad to have you back since then. So thank you for participating. And those that are coming in right now, go ahead and say hello in the chat, like and share. I know we have other things that's going on in Star Wars news that many people are talking about right now, but, come and take a break and and join in on, the true heart of Star Wars and George Lucas era. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and bring our next panelist. Hello, how are you doing?
Doing great. How are you, ladies?
Doing well. I'm so glad to have you on my channel for the first time, I think.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. And first edition hardcover. So
nice.
Still have it all these years later.
Oh, wow. That is such a golden piece right there.
Yes, it is. You never knew it would be back then. You kind of think about it, but now it's like, yeah, anything that's first edition, obviously no Legends banner is a huge deal to have. So
exactly. It just kind of, it makes it more classical, I think.
Right.
And those hardcovers have the beautiful book smell that, everybody loves that. Especially with time and age. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring in our next panelist. Last but not least, Callum. And again, this is your first time on my channel as well. And welcome.
Yes, hello there.
Hello there. How are you doing?
I'm doing quite well. I've been busy in life, but I've been going fairly well, looking after myself, so that's good. And
nice.
then just finally now my normal week's gonna start and not be as busy, and then I'll go, yes, I can do YouTube videos a bit more again. You see?
Wow, awesome. Awesome. I love to hear that. And I will have everybody's link in the description below. I haven't had a chance to add that yet. I've been down myself, so I didn't get a chance to prep the way I wanted to early on. And so everybody's channels will be down in the description here after we're done here. And nice. I recommend everybody to subscribe. Everybody here is EU, loves the EUs, are very knowledgeable. It's always good to hear everybody's different takes and what they feel about each novel and stuff, because then it gives a broader perspective. Yeah. And that's what this is about. So, yes. So, everybody, we are going to begin here. And I know in the beginning, this is the spin-off of, the second book to the Thrawn, the Hand of Thrawn. So, I'm going to start with open and just kind of give your opinion of the first book, Specters, before we move on. So what did you like about it? Just a quick synopsis of it real quick.
Yeah, the first one, it was a duology. So I thought that was kind of strange at the time.
Yeah.
I think they announced this really early. I think in one of my videos, there was a timeline I got from either Insider or Galaxy Magazine. And the magazine issue came out in '95, and I think it showed both Vision and Specter on the timeline. And this didn't come out till '98, and I think Specter was the year before. So they're like, they really knew that those were coming out. I'm like, yeah, back then they actually planned stuff. But I thought it was interesting at the time that they were doing a duology and not a trilogy, and that's probably why this book is so long, almost it is 500 pages, over 500. So, I felt like it probably could have been a trilogy. There was probably enough story there to tell, but nevertheless, it was a duology. The first book, I thought it did a great job of setting up the story like a mystery, kind of like in the original Thrawn trilogy. And I'll be honest, most of his other books that have come out since this one, I haven't been a huge fan of. They just didn't have that magic that these did and the original trilogy. But this one had like a galactic crisis, with the Kamas document and all that, the whole assassination thing with the invisible blaster bolt, all that stuff. I thought it did a great job setting the stage for this book. So yeah, good setup and good book. I only have the paperback of Specter for some stupid reason.
All right. Yeah, and so you would say that's this whole trilogy, or not trilogy, I'm so used to saying trilogy. The duology is like you said, it's like a mystery kind of thing, and you think that it ties really well in with what
like who's doing all this stuff, and then the characters don't know there's a fake Thrawn, and all that. And it's a crisis of galactic consequence. It's not just, Mara and Luke are not running off on another mission to some planet. That's kind of what a lot of his newer books were about. But this is like the whole galaxy's involved. It's Han and Leia, and he pulled in the Bothans, and they're up to their stuff again, and have been for 40 years. So yeah, just really, really great story arc.
Okay. All right. So Callum, so if you want to give your synopsis of Specters of the Past, since that's the first book, and you weren't on the first review for this duology, and your thoughts and feelings about it.
Well, before reading it, because I actually hadn't read it before, so I had to make sure I caught up, because I was still going chronological to catch up with the EU I haven't read.
Okay. Fair enough.
I was going like, okay, they're bringing back Thrawn in some way. How successful is it going to be? And so I think he did a great job of bringing back the thread of Thrawn, even though Thrawn had already died in the Thrawn trilogy, and creating that suspense. And the idea of, especially as we go into Visions of the Future, of working on a peace treaty and all of that for the Empire, makes a huge change in the galactic scale and balance of power as well.
Yeah.
So I usually think of the story all together rather than the separate books as well. So yeah, I tried and enjoyed it.
Okay,
it's really
awesome.
Good.
Awesome. And then Miss Martin Muse, I know you're muted if you're there. I know she said she's going to be back and forth with some stuff she's taking care of with her home. So, but she was with me when we, her and Lady Tauriel was with me when we reviewed Specter of the Past. And so if you guys were there, those in the chat, and hello everyone, and I'll go in there and start bringing everybody or showing who's joining us. If you guys were there with us about 6 weeks ago for the first review of the first novel in this duology, of course you would see, you would have seen how much the ladies loved the book, and especially what it's leading up to. We were talking about that, and this is leading up to the comics union, and with Luke and Mara. So yeah, so we're starting off now in we have Moff Disra and his con artist who is imitating Thrawn. So we learned that from Specter, and it goes right into Visions of the Future, and Tears, who we lost her. Oh no. And with Tears, we later find out who he exactly is. And I'm not going to spoil it until we get there. And then Pellaeon awaits for Bill Iblis. And we know that his messenger Vermil was captured. And Luke leaving to Neruon because of his vision, that he had his multiple vision of everything that's going on. And he just followed the will of the Force to take him where he needed to be. And that was for, to find Mara. And Han and Leia heading out to Pakrek, Major and Minor. And so this is like all the beginning of the book. So Tim, if you have anything you want to say about that little time frame, that leads us up into the new book.
I think that pretty much covers it. Yeah. Yeah, I think that covers it. I read this like about 9 months ago.
Yeah.
So to the best of my recollection, that's a pretty good summary of how it starts out.
Yeah, exactly. You have anything you want to add to that, or if anything I missed, or anything interesting that you thought of during, the lead up into this book? Callum.
Not at this point, Callum.
I think you covered it pretty well as well. I think because it was my first time actually listening to it, and I tried to find the unabridged audio book, but that didn't work out too well. But
I have the unabridged version.
Some audiobooks are abridged, but anyway,
Yeah.
first time listening to the story, it was quite interesting for me to follow along the whole mystery of it rather than having been spoiled before. Because if I did look at what happened, it was years ago, and I don't remember. So it was really good to go along the mystery of going, what actually is going on?
Yeah.
It was really good for that.
All right. So before you lost connection or whatever, Teresa, we were talking about, just giving a brief synopsis about what we thought about the first book, Spectrum of the Past. So I don't know if you want to share that, even though you were there on the review, if you want to share that. And then I just gave a brief summary of the, leading up into the events now that we are going to talk about in this Visions of the Future.
Oh, okay. Well, it was a very good setup. I felt because it definitely left you hanging. I feel like this book set the stage, and then Vision of the Future opened up on everything that was promised with it and moved forward. Of course, there were great moments in Spectre of the Past with Luke and Mara that I loved. I always love everything with Luke and Mara.
Okay.
But also the way that they unfolded the crisis that was happening.
Yeah, exactly. And what I find that was crazy is everybody jumped on, with vengeance against holding the Bothans accountable for the Kamaas, and how the Bothans, they only think of themselves and what they can do for themselves. That's what we see with the setup and stuff. So I thought that was interesting. You guys want to expand on any of this about the Kamaas documents? Tim?
Oh, I think it's cool that they weaved in like this again, like a galaxy-wide crisis over this document that would absolve the Bothans of any wrongdoing. So, in I guess 20 years later in the real world, is it still like a feasible plot line because of the way data works now? I think it still is, because something like that would have been confidential to the point where it wouldn't have just been in every database across the galaxy, right? So wherever it was stored, and they got the copy of it, they deleted it from the source system they got it from. So that was kind of cool that they had like a talisman to chase, and it was the Kamaas document, and that was kind of what Talon Karrde was after. And I like how he's by now in all the books, he's becoming more of a good guy, right? Just trying to do what's good for the galaxy, because he knows it'll be good for business.
And his mind isn't just on the government; it's about the galaxy. Yeah, and it kind of makes him an anti-hero in a sense, because he's like, I'm not going to join your cause. And one thing that I'm not trying to jump ahead or anything, but one thing he said is Han was saying, what's going to make you jump and, join our cause? And then he's like, you don't suppose Leia has any sisters, so I thought that was kind of funny. So that little banter between the two, I thought that was like a nice little comedic piece, because Leia's good looking, Carrie Fisher's good looking, and she's a very strong, independent woman. And their little joke about was, the strong men, them being attracted to strong, independent women. But it was funny. I'm going to go there right now. That Disney Lucasfilm said there was never.
And also it's funny that Winter was already taken.
Oh my God!
By Tycho, right?
Tycho. Yes. Yes. So Callum, with that, do you have anything you want to add to that with the Kamaas documents and the Bothans?
Yeah, I was thinking it was interesting because you would follow along with the reader going, "Oh, I hate failure," and so you almost want the Bothans to lose, because everyone's up to this point, all the Bothans have done with failure has been bad things that have happened. Yeah. And so I think that it's interesting because you read along and then your perspective changes as you find out more about what's happening, and you go, oh, maybe the Bothans aren't at fault, where we would jump to a conclusion of going, oh, yes, it must be the Bothans doing stuff again.
Exactly. And then Truth, our Miss Smart Muses, every time I get to her, she's muted and she's gone. Hello. Oh, you're muted again, darling. Hello? I think I lost her.
Hello? Is it me you're looking for?
Well, if they're working on her AC, they may be having some problems. Oh, the vacuum's going.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get into Luke leaving for Nerawan. So we all know he had his vision, and that vision was kind of, I like that vision and how it played out, because it still goes to the fact that the future is ever, always in motion, that Yoda says. So it doesn't break that continuity. And he's like, well, I'm just going to let the Force take me where I need to be, instead of just picking and choosing. And that's what he did. And so that kind of leads up to, basically the fact that, him and Mara are supposed to be together. They have that Force bond and stuff. So, with that vision and him taking off and seeing the same, I guess you could say, type X, or not X-Wing, sorry, TIE fighter kind of like claw craft that the Chiss has, because they didn't recognize those space crafts, we learned that from the thing. What did you feel about that whole scenario of like him listening to the Force and everything? And did you think it broke continuity? Because I didn't, but I mean, everybody has their own perspective. So Tim, go ahead.
No, it didn't. I don't think so.
Okay.
I remember examining everything in this book when I read it about 8 months ago, because we've learned a lot about things since 1998. So I kind of scrutinized everything, and I felt like it was fine.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's an extra learning step for Luke, because he's going, okay, I'm now at the point where I know a lot about the Force. I have my experience setting up the new Jedi Order so far, but now I'm taking the next step in stepping forward and trusting only the Force and going forward with that.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I do the same thing. I am big about continuity. I'm big about like, oh my God, this kind of echoes here. Or they brought this in and they referred to this, and so I'm big about the continuity. That's what I love about Star Wars, is it's how and if like they had seen a minor error or an error, then they would try their best to fix it. So it makes sense. And the biggest one to really look into what they fixed was Boba Fett, because there was so much going on with him that they had to go back and retcon or refix his arc multiple times. Not trying to change the subject, that's just an example. Yeah. So is she still muted? Are you still there, Teresa? Oh, she's still muted. All right. So
talking about Boba Fett, I think that was mainly because they gave the sort of wrong time frame for when the Clone Wars would take place from the start.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why they went, we'll go back 10 or 20 years, but we won't go back 30 years.
Yeah,
exactly. And and then then also exploring more on his origins when it came to the PT and who his quote unquote father is and stuff. So so not trying to change the subject, but it goes into clones, and that's what we're going to be talking about here soon anyway. So also too, we have speaking of clones, we have Luke and Leia and Han leaving to Patrick Minor and Major, and they discover there are clones of Baron Suntir Fel.
Yep.
And so we have that, and that they're a what would you call it? A little
cell.
Hidden cell. Yeah, hidden
Sleeper
cell.
cell. Yep.
Yep, that was part of Thrawn's plan to gain control back of the galaxy before he was killed. And so I thought that was really interesting. And then what was really interesting about that is that they were still waiting to be called upon when needed 10 years after, but then they created families and they created homes, and that they really didn't want to get involved because, the galaxy don't really care for clones anyways. And so they want to be left alone.
Yep.
So Tim, if you want to go ahead and say anything else according to that, with that.
Well, I don't know how, going back to his first trilogy, they let him say as much as he did about clones, because man, that's really difficult. Well, they used to come out and say back then, you're not allowed to talk about Clone Wars and this and that, but he said a lot of stuff, especially in Dark Force Rising and stuff. It's like, why did you guys let him do that? Because when the prequels come out, it's going to be harder to reconcile, right?
Yeah.
So they kind of avoided it in this one, and they just talked about Thrawn's clones, all these sleeper cells he put out there, and then they just got bored after a while, and it turns out the Fel ones, were they were good guys, they weren't terrible people, so they kind of helped Han and Leia, right?
Yeah.
Because I think at heart, Phil was not a bad guy, even though he was an Imperial for a long time.
Yeah,
there's
and
shades of grey that you can have immorality shown a lot.
Yeah. And then and I know the scenario led up to them being attacked and almost crashing in the Falcon, and how those the clones helped, rescued and helped him and stuff.
Yep.
And how, because Leia is still developing in her force sensitivity as a Jedi, because we know that it took her so long to get where she is as a Jedi Knight when we see her after, in the conclusion of Darkness trilogy. And she started feeling like how Luke feels when they're around clones, like there's something that's not right. There's something that's not right with them. And then realizing their face looks like, Baron.
Yeah.
So I thought that was very interesting how Thrawn recruited him, because we know that he disappeared. And then so he, they lost him. He used to be part of Rogue Squadron. They lost him, and then his wife then disappeared as well. And we didn't realize that they were brought in with Thrawn, and they also lived with the Chiss ascendancy. There's a lot going on with the Fel that if you look into it, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on with them. And
the Fel family also goes all the way back to the old Marvel comics too, which is really cool that they've gone all the way through.
All the way to Legacy, like from one spectrum to the next.
Sure.
And how, because Baron was such a great pilot, Thrawn, cloned him. So I thought that was very interesting. And again, talking about clones here and how much cloning has been used to produce, and this is another instance of that, produce an army or navy or fighters or pilots or whatever, and how the Empire in one shape, way, or form used them, even though we didn't see Palpatine use them after during the Empire rebellion stage. We do see Thrawn using them.
There was a transition period with Palpatine where he started cloning batches of different people and then eventually just phased into all individuals.
Exactly. And one of the we do have one clone that we'll talk about here that is behind this big old scheme of Moff Disras. So let's go ahead and move on a little bit more here. So we do know that these clones do get behind Leia and Han doesn't really trust them. So we know that, but Han doesn't trust anybody really.
No. That's what's awesome about him.
Yeah, he's like, wait a minute here. You got to earn your trust, basically. And so that's what I like about Han as well. And then we have, the battle above Bothan, where we have Bill Bringy, who is stationed there to try to keep peace or civility, because we have all these species that want to get revenge against the Bothans.
It was a cinder box.
Exactly. It was a huge cinder box. So, Tim, I'm going to go ahead and let you expand on that little scenario more, because it goes up to Wedge and them having a different mission than Bill Iblis, from what you remember.
Yeah, because Wedge and was it Tycho that was with him?
Wedge.
Corran, maybe?
Horn was with him.
That was it, yeah. So they go down to the planet, right? And they're trying to track down into the pet shop. They find those Imperial intelligence agents. That was kind of an intense scene, I thought, when they actually found the place, because they were about to get blasted. But then up in orbit, you kind of have some New Republic ships. You've got some just different species ships. Some Bothans are there. What is the name of that other species that was kind of, they were a new species kind of to Star Wars, but
in the Kamasi, I think.
Not the. It was something else. They were on, I think, the Kamasi side. And anyway, you have all these different species up there, and they're just kind of in orbit. They're not fighting, but at any moment, if something jumps off, then, and eventually it does, you'll have this big furball up in the sky, up in space. But down on the ground, Wedge and Corran are trying to. They're trying to stop these. And they're on a hunch, right? This isn't like an official mission, if I remember correctly.
No, because they were. Was it Akbar that told Bill Iblis that he needed to go elsewhere to, to take care of situation in another system.
Mhm.
And he told Wedge, basically, you're under me,
Yep.
but you're not attached under the mission.
Yes.
And Bill Iblis was so good at finding the strings to pull that worked well for him. And we find that out in here in the duology and later in other, other novels that he's in.
Yeah.
He's tactically brilliant as well.
Yeah. And I love Wedge, probably my favorite character. Yeah, that's him right there and right there. So
yeah, I have his
right there.
Series up
And
above
right
me.
there, and right there.
Yeah, he's my favorite he's my favorite pilot that doesn't really have force abilities and stuff. I adore him. I adore him as well.
Well, when I met Aaron Alston in 2002, I got to praise him, personally. And it wasn't like I'm in a line. He just was sitting at the panel table, and I just walked up before the thing started, and he signed Starfighters of Adamar, and I'm like, so you basically took Wedge and you did more for him in one book, in that book, than all these other authors had done up to that point, because I felt like he was mishandled in some of the other Bantam books.
Yeah.
But man, that book was awesome. He did the thing with Ayala, and Wedge was funny, and it was just a great book. Anyway, I don't want to go off track, but yeah, Alston and Stackpole really did, and Zahn did Wedge well. So
yeah,
read the X-Wing series.
Yes.
Exactly. So, Callum, so with that scenario going on that we're talking about, do you have anything you want to add? Because it's always good to, like I said, I like for you guys to all expand on the scenes that we're talking about a little bit more in your own perspective.
I was having a quick look just to check names when there was a first appearance of a few different species in the book. So that's a good addition to it. I think the whole thing of it really ups the stakes when you go just a little spark could just create the whole conflict of war and cause the whole thing to go out of shape. Really keep the tension there, and while not setting a specific timer, you want the characters to figure everything out as soon as possible to try and stop it. And so that's a really good tension in the part of the book.
Yeah, exactly. And we know that Leia, we know that she was sent to Bothan, and they had that that protest that happened that made Han what do you call it? He was a scapegoat for who started it and stuff like that. They blackmailed him or whatever, or not blackmailed him, but you know what I mean. They
framed him. Yeah.
There we go. I'm like, I can't find the word now, Laura. Damn it! I need more coffee or something. Yeah. So they framed him. And, so Leia, we already know that she has a lot to do with, because she experienced, losing a whole planet like the Kamas did, that they put her in the forefront of trying to help find the document and all this other stuff. And so we also now know that she went ahead and sent Lando, Han, and Lobot to go to Bastion, which is a huge imperial stronghold.
Yep.
To find those documents. And on top of that, we also have Talon Karrde, who left to go find George Cardass, and this links to other Zahn books as well. And so I'm going to start with you, Callum, on that. So what did you think about the scenarios there with Han, Lobot, and Lando infiltrating Bastion? We see malfunction with Lobot because they're realizing they're picking up what's going on. And, we do lead to see, the imposter Thrawn talking to them, as well as Talon Karrde leaving to find George Cardass. So if you want to expand on that a little bit more.
And I really like that we get more of Lando and Lobot together, because you don't see that.
Yeah.
And that they put Sam put all of the sort of smuggler elements together with Han and Lando and all that on adventure is always good. Like Scoundrels and stuff as well has some of those really good moments with them.
Yeah.
The whole mystery around George Carter's coming back is really good, I think.
Yeah.
And going, what role's he going to play in the whole story of it? And then also, send 3 dudes to take out a whole Imperial facility. That'll work.
Yeah, exactly. And then I forgot to add too is that during this time frame too as well, Leia finally gets in contact with Pellaeon. And so he's like, and so what scares her and what she has to keep private is that she sent Han and them to Bastion. And then, as she's talking with Pellaeon about a possible peace treaty and stuff, she can't say that she sent them. And
yeah, you know what?
Yeah.
They did that with Leia a lot. Not Bantam, but in all the EU books. Like I just finished reading Betrayal.
Yeah.
For the second time because I read it when it first came out, and man, they really put her in a spot in that one. With when during the battle when Han was attacking the base on Trellis, and she's up in the Galactic Alliance ship, and he's on the other side. It's like she always gets put in these spots where she pretty much has to be like dishonest,
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's really interesting. Is it right or wrong?
Yeah.
I
don't know.
I think it's also playing to all of her diplomatic strengths as well, is that she has to hide things while at the same time being diplomatic with them and all that.
Correct. Yeah.
That's what I was actually thinking of, her being a consummate politician.
There she is.
Yeah, the vacuuming finally stopped. You would not have enjoyed hearing a big vacuum the whole time.
She said it felt like she was in hyperspace or something.
Yeah, or someone else said it. Yeah. Sound effects to go along with the conversation is. I've been looking forward to this whole month, and then they start vacuuming. But she's a consummate politician. And so I like the way she's able to pull it off. But also I was just intrigued as F about the whole interaction.
Yeah.
With her and Pellaeon as well. Because I'm not sure that they've ever really been face to face like that. And Pellaeon being a very different place than he was 10 years before.
Yeah. Yeah, they were.
I don't think they had
went to him. She went to Pellaeon again before this, or no, after this, in the New Jedi Order. So I think this is their first interaction together.
Yeah,
yeah.
And the way also that Pellaeon, I love this character, but he's really seems rattled, and he's not even sure what's going on. For one thing, he's made this big shift to wanting to make peace, and at the same time, then, what's up with this Thrawn thing? And he's like, I don't know, but it's something.
Like, just as I'm asking for peace, why are they bringing him back?
Yeah, like he's like, I watched him die. We confirmed his death, and so it really makes him question. But then he also uses, his intelligence, like, this really can't be possible, but I'm willing to look into it because if this is really Thrawn, like the real Thrawn that I grew, that I was understudy to, he would have contacted him first. He would have been the first one to know. And so that's why he questions this. And that's why he questions everything that's going on with, this Thrawn and Moff Disra. And, so this gets into like an investigative stuff for him that he goes in and he penetrates and stuff and he gets the information. So I'm not trying to jump ahead here, but that's one of the things that I love about Pellaeon is that he was an understudy of Thrawn's. He too was, he had his tactical smarts as well and used what he learned from Thrawn for himself in scenarios.
Yeah.
He's not taking things at face value like he would have maybe before Thrawn.
Exactly. So we see a huge significant character growth between that. And we see the true love of the Empire through him. And he wants to truly make it. He's concerned about, the Empire in its whole entirety, whereas Moff Disra wants to continue to fight, to destroy so they can have overall control. And he's like, no, that's not what, that's not what's going to make us survive as a people, as as a government. Our own government is continuing to fight. So I really like that about him.
Yeah, it had a lot of Star Trek Undiscovered Country vibes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay, because I am a fan, but like of all the classical with Kirk and when I grew up watching, my family was either Star Wars or the early Star Trek. And so I went the Star Wars side, and some of them stayed on the Star Trek side. So
Star Trek 6. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Tim.
Well, on the Star Trek watch party, we start the movies on Tuesday, so we'll probably be to Undiscovered Country in 2 weeks or something. So yeah, you guys should join us for sure.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yes.
So do you guys?
But good. That's a good parallel, Teresa. I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah. I know she comes in blazing. She's like, "I'm back!" Boom.
like
Well, because in
glory.
the movie, you have like these two parties, these two governments, and there are people in each that want peace, but they don't know that each other wants peace. And then you have this cabal of people on both sides that also don't want peace.
No.
So it's a really interesting dynamic. And yeah, I bet you Zahn drew from that movie for this duology for sure.
Yeah, trying to sabotage the whole situation with shenanigans like this. Yeah, but
excellent.
And Laura, you touched on it too about that Pellaeon has a bit of a different perspective on the Empire that maybe we haven't seen, because we've always seen it as evil and Nazi and horrible, but for him, it actually means something to him, whether right or wrong. It really, you don't get the effect that he is, one of like Hitler's henchmen. He actually truly believes in the ideals of what the Empire represents.
Yeah, exactly. And then also too, you could see how Thrawn, the ideas of Thrawn too, because, even in the past, when we see the Thrawn trilogy, Thrawn made it a clear point that he is about preserving the people, not just casting them and using them and killing them if they don't, do what they're told. I mean, he did have one example of killing someone, but then he soon switched to where he valued his people, his unders, and all that, and that they mean something to the overall plan, and that like Vader and the Emperor, who, if someone didn't do something right, you're gone, kind of deal.
Right.
So there was that.
Yeah, in a way, Thrawn would have been a much better emperor than the Emperor. He emperored better.
He emperored better.
So I think that's where you see more of a fair hand when it comes a lot later on in the timeline with Jag being the new emperor of the Fell Empire and stuff, where he has a bit more of a fair hand than Sidious did.
Yeah. And so I'm going to go ahead and what did you guys feel about like when Han and Lando were captured and they got to see Thrawn again? Even though we know we know about Thrawn, they truly thought he was back. Tim, if you want to expand on that a little bit.
Well, I don't know. I think it was almost like a test, and if it failed, they probably would have been dead on the spot. But lucky for them, because I think it would have been tough for them to. He said the name of the show would be Trekking After Dark. We never thought of that. But the point is, if here's what I'm trying to say: if Han and Lando don't read each other's minds, so if they hadn't really thought that was Thrawn, they couldn't have said, "Hey, let's pretend it is," so that they don't kill us. I guess they kind of lucked out that they didn't say you're not Thrawn, because they probably would have been dead on the spot. So it was almost like the Imperials were testing to see how good is the impression by Flim.
Yeah, I thought that was such a weird name. I haven't announced his name, but I was like laughing.
And he was like a not really a comedian, but he was like an actor, right?
Yeah, he was like kind of actor, kind of thing. And I think Moff Deezer took his time trying to pick someone that would fully fit. That's what I got the conclusion with that.
Yeah.
So so that scenario. So Callum, with you, when Han and them got to get introduced to the quote unquote Thrawn, what did you think about that scenario?
That was interesting because I was like, man, the only thing that I know about that would be possible is the cloning and that. So it's like, oh, he chose to do cloning again.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about how, like, even if you have flash training and had the knowledge of what Thrawn knew, he didn't have the experience of what Thrawn knew, so he would still end up being different as far as a character to the original Thrawn.
Yeah.
I also noticed they didn't call him Thrawn.
Yeah, Thrawn, like. Yeah, and I forgot to mention that oh shit, now I lost my train of thought because I was reading something else. I hate when that happens. So Treyla, go ahead so Treyla, go ahead and expand on that, and I'll get back to my point here pretty quick.
Oh, I'm totally in favor of the Thrawn, and may he reign, the first of his name. But I am totally mixing up my my fantasy sci-fi now. But no, everything that y'all just are after saying, and I really feel like Lando has already been established as being thrown off his game by this, but Han too. No, I don't know. I think they're just realizing, like, if there was a title for this chapter, am I correct that it would be like, oh, fudge? You know,
fudge.
That's
what's going on.
You know what? You know what's? I let me say this before I forget. You know what's also interesting?
What's that?
Who was together when someone from the New Republic got first sight of Thrawn, like in Heir to the Empire? Or was it Dark Force Rising? It was Lando and Han when they first, when they were hiding in the trees on Merkur. So
Oh, yes. Yeah, that was at the end of Heir to the Empire.
And this book will go back to that too as well, because they do question him in the scenario, and so that's a great mention right there. Is that when they were questioning, he's like, well, you know, I remember you guys being there. And that goes back to my point that I wanted to make, that is Moff Disra knew about the Hand of Thrawn. So we know that in the beginning of the book, or even towards the end of the first book. And so he knows about the Hand of Thrawn, but I don't think he knew that there was clones yet, or a clone of Thrawn. But
I think they didn't know about some of the things that were discovered later. I don't know how far you want to go forwards, but like the extra bits and pieces that Luke and Mara, when they go off and discover all the extra things with the Hand of Thrawn, they don't know.
And because Moff Disra got into the deep protective files of the Empire, including Thrawn's, to basically find out like what he was planning before he got killed. That, you know, kind of, and then so they got to educate Phlegm. Phlegm, whatever, Mr. Mucus. And so, you know, they had and their tactical person that they are using to help with you know, with the war part and stuff, and the tactics, the military tactics is Tierce. And we find out that Tierce was one of the Imperial Guards at the time. That's all I'm going to expand on just right now about him until we get to that part. And so he has a lot of people in place to help create this illusion. And so that also leads up to what Tim was saying about, you know, them, you know, Han and Lando seeing Thrawn on Merkur in the trilogy. And then so that question comes to them again, you know, I knew it was you guys, or I knew you were there. And so that kind of puts the belief into them.
Yeah.
So that was really well done how Zahn wrote that, because he made it sound believable, even though that we know that this isn't really Thrawn. You know, so I thought that was really, really interesting. So yeah. And then so let's go ahead and get into Talon Karrde and the new character. And I think this is her first introduction, unless unless Tim or
Shada?
Yeah, Shada or
no,
Shada.
And Tales from Mos Eisley Cantina,
okay,
right?
I say I wasn't too sure about that.
Because if you go to A New Hope, the movie, right?
Yeah.
The Tonica sisters, it's not really the Tonica sisters, it's Shada and Karuli.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, they're in disguise.
Yeah.
And that's why they don't look like twins like in the movie, because they're not twins in real life.
Short story, it has Tonica sisters in quotation marks.
Oh, okay. All right. And I totally forgot about that. That's why I was doubtful about that. But yeah, because I remember in the first book, I think she kind of tells Han that she was there when they were, you know, inquiring about the Death Star plans or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. So that's where she was introduced. And then she actually appears in Dark Force Rising or Last Command, because she's Mazik's bodyguard.
Okay.
In the Last Command, it has a panel of her from the comic.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so we have her now. She leaves to be Talon's bodyguard. And they make their way to Exocron, which we know that they have to go through, what do you call it? Asteroid, through asteroids, and it takes a while to get there. And Karrde's not telling her exactly everything, and so they have that push and pull right there. So what do you guys think about their push and pull in their relationship? Because we know Talon, he's attracted to very good looking women. He had Mara in there and stuff like that, so we know his track record and stuff.
She's the new Mara, but in this sense, instead of being like a daughter, she's more like of a potential love interest, even though she seems to be a little bit younger than he is. So you kind of sense that's going to happen eventually, even though it starts out like more of a business relationship.
Yeah.
So, which is fine, Yeah.
And so, Callum, what did you think about that, the relationship between Talon and Shada?
I think it was interesting because it was almost like she was a bit of an understudy. Of like Karrde was taking her through the steps of like, this is how I think, and then also being a good observer and a voice in when he is trying to question things later and going like, what am I actually doing? Of what is the actual purpose of my life, sort of thing. It's really good that she can come in and help motivate him to figure things out as well.
Yeah. And Teresa, I don't know if she's muted or not. Are you there with us?
Oh yeah, I'm here. They're after moving downstairs. I think she was also very interesting because she is now displaced because she had that family, the Mistral. I hope I'm saying that
guards.
right.
Shadow guards. Yeah.
Shadow guards, yes. And that was almost like her family. And she's feeling very vulnerable, but she knows what she's doing. And I think she's cautious as F against Karrde. It's just very nice seeing, I don't want to call it a dance, but a tension between the two of them as they're going through this, and then little things happen as they get to maybe understand a few things going on with each other as they continue on this little quest they're doing.
And we see them, they get to Exegol, George Karrde. So I'm not going to get into exactly, what had happened to him, because we'll be soon getting into the Ancti monks and stuff. But at first, George Karrde, pretends that he is ill, and he's on his deathbed and stuff, and so that creates that tension between Talon and George Karrde, because we get into the history of between them two. George Karrde, or Talon Karrde, basically picks up to where Karrde left off, with being the top out of the smugglers and stuff, the top, but from the things that happen, George Karrde, Talon Karrde thinks that George wants to kill him. So there's that little push and pull, which leads up to, George Karrde's history of him. He had disappeared, and they wondered what happened to him. In fact, he encounters a dark Jedi, and he's taken to Dagobah. Karrde was physically and mentally traumatized when caught in the middle of the battle between the Dark Jedi and Master Yoda. So there you go. So there's a little bit of that. And Yoda nursed Karrde back to health and opened his mind to the Force, which is very interesting, because I love that whole part in the novel about what had went down with that. And then after that, Karrde, has spent his years wandering the galaxy, coming to study the ways of the mystic force between the Ancti monks. But how that happened was basically after Yoda healed him and opened his mind to the Force, he took advantage of that. And I liked how that happened, because Yoda gifted him with another chance, and he squandered that.
Very much like a lot of people would do if they could suddenly use the Force.
Exactly. So, Tim, since we're getting into the anti month, and I know you wanted to expand on that a little bit more, go ahead.
Well, and George is an interesting character. It's a character that came from kind of out of nowhere. I mean, I think they alluded to him a little bit in the first Thrawn trilogy. I don't think they named him, but they definitely alluded to him, right? Because Karrde took over his organization when they found the Dark Force and all that stuff. But point is, he's an interesting character. And then the whole story with Yoda, like I reread that a couple hours ago because to me that was the most interesting part. So he winds up on Dagobah, and then they really don't explain, I think on purpose. Zahn doesn't explain like why did they go to Dagobah when there's a Jedi Master there. Yeah. And then he like describes the fight that took a day and a half, and there's fire and electricity, and then finally this blue explosion, like when the Emperor dies. So I kind of like how when a dark, side person dies, there's this blue energy like the Emperor does. I think Joruus, they did the same thing. So that was really interesting. But the fact that it was a day and a half, obviously it probably wasn't a lightsaber fight, because I don't know if Yoda had his lightsaber with him on Dagobah, but it sounds more like a fight like he and Dooku had on Geonosis, when they were just kind of fighting with their powers and stuff. So that was kind of cool. I
wouldn't be surprised, thinking of the lightsaber, if the Dark Jedi tried to use his lightsaber and Yoda just uses Jedi Minis to absorb it and goes, I can't use that now.
Well, let me ask you this. I know that, what's the guy, the Anzadi guy, did they ever reveal, was this him or was that a different Dark Jedi that Yoda fought? Because wasn't there an Anzadi Dark Jedi?
Exactly is
because isn't that Dark Jedi in the Republic comics, that Anzadi one that you're talking
and
about?
I think he comes back in I, Jedi too, if I'm not mistaken. In any event, it must have been a pretty powerful one if Yoda couldn't make short work of him. So anyway, he heals him, which unlike the Disney continuity, you just don't put your hand on him. It took time for him to heal George, and then George fixes the ship enough to where he can limp back to civilization. And then he just starts taking over, the criminal underworld bit by bit. So I don't want to spoil anything for Teresa, but something very similar, I guess you could say, happens in Babylon 5 eventually. So I don't want to give anything away, but that's I'm thinking maybe Zahn kind of drew some inspiration from that, because that show was ending around the time he was writing this book. So I don't know, maybe it's just a coincidence. But anyway, then he loses, all of a sudden it goes away, right? Yeah. He's not awesome anymore. So he goes back to Yoda. He demands, like, make me, smart and strong again. And Yoda like levitates him and just mocks him, and then screws him over big time, and then shames him. And then George is so ashamed that he doesn't even go back to his businesses, his criminal enterprises. He just says, I'm not doing that. And then Yoda says, you're dying. And he says, well, can you heal me? Nah, because I got to get ready. Yes. I got to prepare to train someone. And I think it said 100 years. I don't think it said ever. I think it said my most important training in 100 years.
Yeah, I think so.
I think which is kind of interesting. But then he's like, you got to go to these Ing-T guys, though, and they can heal you. And then he does. He doesn't tell anyone where he's going, and he goes.
Yeah.
So,
and then
I thought it was very interesting in the way of how he was healed. It reminded me almost of if Yoda had some of the knowledge that Darth Plagueis had.
Yeah.
Oh.
I think that Yoda knew a lot, but because I listened to Revenge of the Sith on Audible, so it's unabridged. Great. We all probably all agree that that's one of the best novels, like, for the movies ever, is The Revenge of the Sith. And he even tells that he's been training the Jedi for 800 years. As he was when he was trained, and never allowed them to evolve. So that part goes into not even allowing them to study about the Sith, and prepare for any Sith. And
because the Sith were dead, you see.
Yeah, so I think you have something going on there with that, Callum, because he probably knew, but because he didn't think that it would benefit the Jedi that he's training because they thought the Sith were gone, that they didn't study them.
Very interesting if he ended up, because he probably spearheaded a lot of what the rules and everything were for the prequel Jedi, because he was around the longest of going, oh, I learned a bit about the dark side, don't let them do it because it'll cause a lot of problems from his point of view.
Yeah. He was a fear of having his Jedi go dark, and that he never thought that they would have to fight any Sith. And then when he learned that they came back again, they were never gone, but when they came back again, he realized that the Sith studied them and evolved from there, and the Jedi never evolved since, he became a Jedi himself. And so that gave me kind of chills and stuff, and kind of lent to Luke becoming the heir to the new Jedi Order and how he had to change everything. That it had to evolve under him. So I'm not trying to steer off, but that's a great point when it comes to this, with what Yoda may have known and how may he have, helped Karrde heal, and how it may have took longer than expected, and a lot of his strength, and that he needed to have the rest of his strength to train Luke. So,
but going on from there, so these Ainti are these aliens that look really weird, and this is, I guess, a good point to kind of mention how Zahn, all the way back Heir to the Empire, was really good at, because they sent him a box right in 1990 of all the West End Games books to date, which would have been awesome, right? Just to get this
I would have loved to
heavy ass box,
Oh yeah.
So he goes through them, and if you look, and he actually had to go back and change some stuff in Heir to the Empire. He said this in interviews. But, using all the vehicles, stuff that didn't appear in the film, little background characters, the names of characters and stuff like that they, like on-screen characters that they named in the West End books. So he's always been good at that. So the Ainti were first in the what was it called? The Dark Strider campaign from West End Games. And they had, that was like a huge initiative they did. And so there are these aliens that have a different discipline in the Force, and George kind of talks about it a little bit. So he goes to them, and then they're able to heal him, but there's a trade-off. He has to commit to staying there for the rest of his life to train with them. I guess that's just kind of like their religious type of belief.
Yeah,
so he does.
Like the monks going to the temple to train for their lives, and that.
Right.
Yep.
So he does that, and he's able to live. So I thought that was interesting. And another thing from West End, so Zahn has a mention, like, of all the New Republic ships. One of them is commanded by Alex Winger. So I don't know if you guys recognize that name, but Charlene Newcomb invented the character who Dennis Pellegrim just interviewed a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, maybe a month ago. And she wrote tons of stories about this character that she just kind of made up. And she was a daughter of like an imperial governor, wound up being a rebel. She's force sensitive and stuff like that. So there's a mention of her commanding one of the ships. So if you go through this book, you could find so many instances where he used West End stuff in the books, which is awesome because it's consistent, right? He's looking in the books and seeing what makes sense. What's come before. I don't think a lot of authors try to do that, and maybe the editors didn't make him do that. So I'm glad that he wanted to do that. Well,
with that, George Lucas encouraged them to put West End Game stuff in.
Yeah,
like, I know Jason Fry, when he was writing his stories, said that George Lucas really wanted him to put West End Game stuff in. And so that's where the whole start of the Holocron with Leland Chi and Alan Caution that came in, because I had to keep track of everything.
Well, and then like Nathan Butler's Timeline Gold that's been out since like 97, 98, constantly updated until he retired a couple years ago. But here's something else. Like in the Japanese cover art of the book, you know who they used for the likeness of Karrde? It was George Lucas.
Oh, it was George. I thought it was Timothy Zahn. It was George Lucas.
It was George Lucas, yeah. Like
Okay.
if you go to the Wikipedia page, it'll have like the photo from the Japanese cover. So, and then like the way they describe when they finally get into the secret part of his house, because remember, it's like this house on the side of a mountain
Yeah.
that looks like a piece of crap. Well, you go in there and then there's like a turbo lift that
Mhm.
goes far away. Well, then it's this nice place. Well, if the way they describe that data card library, if you look at the Skywalker Ranch library, that's how he describes it.
Oh, okay.
So I thought that was a nice little Easter egg, like, wooden staircases winding down. And if you look in, you can get a picture. You probably have like Magic of Myth and stuff like that probably has a photo of the library at Skywalker Ranch. I'll post a photo later tonight and show you guys. But yeah, the way they describe it, it's pretty clear that, they were trying to make that illusion. So
awesome. And that's what I just love about all of this is like it ties into everything, but then they also have the history, a little bit of like the creator himself in that too. So that's what makes it even more magical and stuff. And then so with the mystics, 18 monks, we also see them, when because we know that Jason Solo, basically went on a 5-year hiatus to, discover more about the Force and his place in it and stuff like that. Get questions, what have you, goes, encounters other Force societies, species, or whatever. 18 monks were one of them. And so when Luke got exiled, we also see him in what do you call it? Fate of the Jedi. So we also get to encounter the 18 monks in Fate of the Jedi. So I thought that was really interesting as well. So
there he is.
Yeah.
And
Oh, that's
they even
yes.
they even have this. What the hell is that species called from the prequels? From the Corporate Alliance. They even have one of those in there.
Right there. Yeah. So I can't think of their name right now.
But the name of the character, like from the movie, is Pascal Argente. But I thought that was kind of cool. George Lucas. So
okay. That is right. So everybody in chat that's listening, there's a bit of history. Not only is the content, it's tied continuity wise, it's also tied to the creator, and it just gives you goosebumps.
That's a lot of things are.
Thanks the maker.
Yep.
And guess what? He interacted with Yoda, so that makes sense too. So,
and we don't get Yoda species at all, and that too either. And George wanted him to stay in history and stuff. So, Callum, on that situation there with George Kardas and his confrontation with the Dark Jedi, and all of that we talked about. If you want to expand or just give your thought about that as well.
I mean, it came as sort of left the field for me because I'm like, I didn't really expect Yoda reference and stuff to happen with that to be put in.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh, okay, that happened. What time was that? Because you also got to remember that Yoda helped the people in Galaxy of Fear as well.
Yeah.
When they went on Dagobah. And so I'm like, I wonder which came first, which is probably he came after the cannibals there were removed.
And
then he ended up getting the help there. But it's a quite interesting thing to go, wait, hang on. I didn't expect that. But what happened in between? Yoda did more than I thought.
Yeah, exactly. There's so much more. Just like, with Obi-Wan Kenobi, when we have the Last of the Jedi, we do have an off adventure that Kenobi does, but he doesn't leave Tatooine very long. Yeah. It's something that he needed to take care of to protect Luke. So I'm not going to give any spoilers. We're not supposed to talk about that, but they did do stuff, but it didn't break continuity.
I mean, it sort of in a way. He didn't leave for long enough for it to make a difference, but also Yoda's a bit different because the person wasn't there that he had to protect.
Exactly.
So he had the opportunity to just wait there and then help whoever came.
Yeah, he just had to make sure he preserved his life so that when it was time for him to train, he was there. And so I thought that was very interesting. So Miss Smart Muses, if you want to, touch up on anything that we talked about in that scenario.
Well, no, except for just the fact that my head just exploded. We really went outside the book here. No, I mean, I think it's fascinating, and I like it because it really is showing just how deep and rich all of this stuff was that they were doing in the 90s. And of course, I've got to They're knocking on my door. Just I'm gonna mute myself. I'll be back.
Just when she's on the spot there. All right. And so another fun fact is that we already know that George Cardis had a sidekick or a I wouldn't call him a butler, but or maybe he is a butler. I don't know, because that's what he seemed like to me. Into Knee, they call him, and he was actually a nod to Anthony Daniels.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he's a nod to Anthony Daniels, because even him, with his short hair and how he would say people mistake him for a droid and he's not.
Yep.
So I thought that was very interesting, that nod to.
I love it. Yep, it was good.
Yeah. So there's another interesting fact, people in the chat. If you haven't had a chance to read it or you haven't picked up this novel in a long time, do it. So let's go ahead and move on. So we are on Nirawan. Mara and Luke discover more of Thrawn's origins and legacy. So we're getting into what the meat and potatoes about what's going on here as well. He had been dispatched by the Emperor to secure the base power for the unknown in the unknown region. So that's his exile. We already know about that, unless you haven't read further into Thrawn's backstory. And so basically, because he's seen an unknown threat, and I think they debunked, or Zahn said that the unknown threat that Thrawn talks about wasn't the Vong, but they never gave a clear name, so we can still assume it might be the Vong.
Yep.
What do you guys think about that?
Well, I thought it was, Star Wars, Lucasfilm, I should say, they own the story, right?
Yeah.
But, Bantam published it. So I don't think they could have put up a stink about this, but I think it's really interesting that they set up the Del Rey era using the Bantam era.
Yeah.
So
the
far outsiders.
Yeah, the far
outsiders. They didn't go, let's just cut it off and then not really connect anything.
Yeah, because we have this, and then we get into Survivor's Quest, which is after this, and and it still links into all of that because it's a Zahn novel and it's a standalone Mara and Luke novel. And I'm not trying to change the subject. I'm just saying with the Far Outsiders, this kind of goes more into that. And then after that, we get into the New Jedi Order. But they also said that there are so many threats out there. Like the Chits was telling them, there's so much threats out here that, it would make your blood curdle, basically. And so even if, the Far Outsiders are not exactly the Vong, it still leaves room open to know that there are other threats out there.
I wouldn't be surprised if they left it open for multiple different threats, not just the Yuuzhan Vong, but even other species that the Chiss had to fight.
I just remembered Nominor was in Crimson Empire.
Yeah. Yeah, he was the one that was sent in undercover. So, and he was there for in the galaxy for a long time before they started invading. So that was very interesting.
Yep.
So, so we have the Empire of the Hand, which is basically the alliance of the worlds governed by the Imperials and the Chiss. Imperial and Chiss philosophies. The command is the Hand of Thrawn. The fortress is on Nirawan. So we know that already. So we then we have Boss Prak. I think I said his name right, along with Baron Fell. So the actual Baron Fell, not the clone.
Right.
And so they've been trying to contact Luke Skywalker, and he never got the message. But Mara went to investigate, and we know that the what are those creatures called again? I didn't write their names down.
Comk and Comja.
Yeah, something like And so we get involved with these creatures, and they're like bird / Mynock type bred creatures. That's how they described them and stuff. And so those creatures were trying to get hold of Luke Skywalker to because the people from the fortress were causing problems for them and stuff like that. And then on top of that, Mara went, and Parak wants to recruit Mara. So we have that little push and pull there, and she refuses, which kind of brings flashbacks from how she used to serve under the Emperor and stuff. So what do you guys think about that little scenario with her and the Hand of Thrawn? Callum, go ahead and go.
thinking. Yeah, I think it was interesting they chose Mara to go first.
Yeah.
Not Luke, because during all of the other stories, it tends to be Luke's the big threes in the forefront. But the Mara leads the charge is quite different to actually go hear the other party and then Luke sort of chasing after her.
Yeah.
Rather than the other way around, which is quite a flip compared to even the Thrawn trilogy where Luke's leading the charge and Mara's sort of going along with him.
Yeah.
And so I think that's quite an interesting dynamic with that.
Yeah, and that's a good point because Specter of the Past was a lot more like Luke heavy than anything else, and then we have Vision of the Future, which is more or less Mara heavy, and but with this, we also know that they used the Islamuri to trap her and Luke because they go on and they have their confrontation and stuff like that, and it's interesting to see how Luke can still work around the Islamuris and then so we have that as well. And what I found interesting is that a part of that confrontation and is that when they find Thrawn's Sparti clones, the cloning facility down there, and how it's like a set up room for someone to live in, and they find his clone, and then they confront the droids there. And what I'm getting at, and I use this for my evidence as well, or for the video I did, is that I use this in comparison to Luke in Mandalorian versus Luke in the original EU. He struggled to fight against 4 of these droids that probably had kurtosis in them, I think.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
it would make sense because they wouldn't have access to Beskar.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
and
Frick.
how they basically the 4 of them surrounded them in each corner there, and he had a hard time. And this is where we discovered the Force bond with him and Mara and stuff. So I thought that was really interesting. So Teresa, I'm going to have you start first on this. What do you think about that scenario?
Okay, I heard a whole bunch of stuff. The scenario, you're just talking about the whole scenario with Mara and Luke?
Yeah, about them, facing off those 4 droids down there in the cloning / home facility for the Thrawn that they're creating. You remember how they were they had to work together because Mara thought they were going to die, and Luke had to show her that there's another way to get out of this, and how they started connecting Force bond.
Oh, well, for sure. Yeah. Because you're talking about the first time, not the big one at the end, correct?
Yeah.
I didn't miss that. Okay. Because if I missed that, well, they're all gone now.
The big one out of that. we didn't.
No. Yeah. I mean, I think it was all very interesting. And I liked the way that they start to gradually kind of meld together in this. Because at first it's just like, they're almost frenemies still at this point, and there's a lot of tension. And Mara's kind of PO'd at him because she felt like he wasn't fulfilling his way of the Force, like always trying to solve everything. And he was kind of frustrated with her and perhaps a little bit jealous because he was saying, well, you never wanted anything to do with me, and you just, you went up with Lando, and it was so funny.
Oh no, Luke's whining. Oh no.
Exactly. But little situations, almost like Days of Our Lives school or something, they would be like, oh, we've got to do this. Oh no, we're standing really close to each other as we're talking about this. And then, oops, oh, sorry, we're in this tight tunnel or something. They're always getting closer physically. But as that's happening, the symbolism is they are also, their souls are starting to connect. And is it the chicken or the egg? Is it the Force, or is it love, or is it love and the Force? Who knows? But whatever it is, it's starting to work together. And in these first times when they're working together, they're finding, dang, when we work together with the Force, and as we're opening up to that, we're good.
Hey, Teresa.
I was waiting for that.
Don't call it a diet.
Oh,
No,
I will not.
go there.
No, it is not.
That's like
Well, you're gonna make me start cursing.
that's his whole point. He wants to hear you curse.
No,
But what's interesting about this, because I kind of skipped ahead a little bit with that, because in their interaction inside the cave, as they have to move along, he's slowly training her, but she's slowly resisting. And she gets mad at Luke because he can hear what the what you call him, child of the winds is saying, because they have some innate force abilities, I guess, that helps Luke with understanding that. So it's something about the force between them that Luke can understand them, and Mara gets upset because she can't hear him. But then she also goes back to him and says, you need to slow down, you need to stop using so much power, you were tainted. And so she's given him a little bit of dose of reality as well in this as well. And so I thought that was interesting too, because we also seen the push and pull in them in the first novel, and how they react to each other. So we're starting to get a lot more tense in the relationship, the tenseness between them, and that push and pull in between them. So, Kellen, what do you think about their interaction and their arc leading up to the droids?
Well, I was just thinking about how she warned him against using too much power, and then what happens when she dies?
What?
He goes full on power against Lumia, and then
Yeah.
And though I think she's a great counterpart to him with that, because he always has the fear of turning to the dark side, and she's someone that can keep him in check and give him that reality check when he needs it.
Yeah.
And that's the great relationship that they have.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you can see that starting to form in that first little bit, and then even later on, even more.
Yeah. And Tim, so what do you think about that? Because we see there's a lot going on with them inside those caves. And I know that at one point, before we get to the next stage of them, because we still have a few more things to get through here, he does force heal her. And you also have him put in the force trance, and he kisses her. So what do you think about this situation, like their whole arc?
Me too.
So far?
Well, yeah, I remember that being kind of cheesy, but when he's not being like a Jedi, Luke's kind of a cheesy kid still, right? So I mean, think about it. Like if you go back to Truce at Bakura, when he meets Gariel Captison, it's like he didn't know what he was doing, the way that they describe it, but he kissed her hand or something like that. So I guess it's in line with the character, the way he's been portrayed in the expanded universe.
Yeah.
So
and he didn't want to, because he realizes, and she even confronts him about his relationships, to where he's like even jealous of Lando. So let's get to that part too before we move on.
well, that's what I was going to say. Like, so between Luke and Mara, I think Luke liked her from the get-go in Heir to the Empire, because he's a Jedi, right? He's almost a Jedi master, all that stuff, but there's no one else like him. So he finds this chick that has force sensitivity, right? Even though she at the time is a complete bitch, but she also has force sensitivity, and that's one of the first. Yeah, it's one of the first people he finds. So it's like, I have someone that has a shared background. So I think that instantly made him attracted to her, and then eventually I think she liked him too.
Yeah, they weren't related. That was also a positive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Callista was also force sensitive. Yeah.
Well,
but that was later. That was like 2-3 years.
Yeah, it was later. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Mara's a redhead. Dudes like redheads.
Can't deny.
Yeah. So Teresa, let's get that, because I love it that we have the male and female perspective to these kind of scenarios and stuff, and so we have diversity in gender here. So basically, what I'm getting at is that, what do you think about that kiss? That he's force healing her. She's bantered and and basically put reality in front of him about how his relationships and his dark side. Being, meddling and stuff like that. And then how he feels like if he gets into a relationship with someone, that he's going to further endanger them. But then yet he still kisses her as he puts her in a force trance or whatever. So what do you think about that?
Days of our lives. I'm starting to be attracted to her, but every time I'm close to someone, they get hurt. I was laughing my head off, but of course I loved it. And then when the little force creature thing goes, Jedi Master and his beloved, he's like, beloved? Yeah. I remember thinking it was kind of romantic.
Yeah.
Before I thought about Me Too, because if Star Wars is a modern fairy tale, and I recall feeling that it was very much like a reverse Sleeping Beauty. You know, the kiss wakes her up, the kiss puts her to sleep. And I thought it was appropriate, especially because he's weaving this theme where he's using these healing trances at each stage as they're falling deeper in love.
Yeah.
And of course, ending with the big joke that Mara pulls on him at the end.
Yeah, kind of. And if you think of it without, like, when you haven't read it and you just hear that, you go, so he's putting her asleep to take advantage of her?
Oh God, yeah. I wouldn't reply nowadays.
Look at it symbolically, okay? Yeah, if you look at it symbolically, it's not creepy.
But I think it's also, especially after going through all of the thing of like confronting him about his relationships and that, it's a thing of him going, actually, I really do love her compared to all of the other people I've been with. It's different.
Yeah. All right, so let's switch gears. Let's talk about Wedge and Horn on Bothan, investigating and trying to make sure that those shields don't get taken down. Because we know that, every other species and their mothers want some kind of revenge against the Bothans for, what happened between them and the Kamas and stuff. We have a lot of tension and like it's a tinderbox in that area. And Bill Iblis goes off to his mission. And so we have Wedge and Horn on the ground there about the Wii. So go ahead, Tim, and if you want to expand a little bit more on that, because I know you really love Wedge.
Yeah, I remember after, or was it before, they make it to that base, right? No, that's when they discover something's amiss because aren't they in like a park or something and like a stranger comes up to them or something along those lines, and it winds up being that lady that's like
Miranda Savage.
Yeah. Is she a former agent or a current one? I'm having a hard time remembering.
She's an employee of Talon Karrde.
Yep. That's right. She wasn't a New Republic agent. Yeah, that was pretty cool because it was this character out of nowhere, and you kind of liked her. She was kind of cool.
She was a sassy old lady that still friggin' live life, can do stuff and stuff, and which made people kind of doubt her abilities because they think because she's old, she's feeble or whatever, like this undercover agent for Talon Karrde.
Yeah, so I'm glad he gave Wedge something to do in the book. That was really awesome. I think it's important that the guy that is in all 3 original trilogy movies and survived 2 Death Star runs gets something to do in the EU novels.
And was part of retaking Coruscant and all of that. It was such is about on level with the big 3 really, but he's just not in that force sensitive area, and he's in the other area of the military. So it's great.
Well, I love that. I'm not a huge fan of special editions, but I kind of like both. I like the original celebration at the end of Return of the Jedi, and I like the new one. So I like when they showed more shots of Wedge. Like he's more familiar with Luke than they had initially portrayed. That was awesome. Like they're hugging. So
oh gosh, I'm starting to get the feels because I love me some Wedge. I love that, and I thought it was clever the way that the old lady made herself manifest was some dudes come up and pickpocket them, and then she pickpocket.
That's what it was.
Pickpockets. Yes, that was clever, and I love the way we almost had Wedge saying the SH word.
Yeah,
because he reaches for and he goes shh, and then it cuts off.
It makes you wonder what really the word is, right? Because I think, I think this is the first book to use criffing, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So,
criffing. It's like such language.
Mm-hmm.
Such language.
How dare you? Yeah. So there you go. Teresa swearing on stream. Yeah.
There you go. Criffin.
Yes, and I like this little off mission they did with Wedge and Horn. I like how they introduced Miranda Savage and how after they have to go back to the Paragon, to Bill Iblis and stuff, we still see her, tormenting the two guys, and I forgot to write their names down. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't remember either.
And but they're the saboteurs of the shields or whatever, but she, they find out that they are the suspects, and she continues to investigate after Wedge and Horn has to leave. So I love that they still kept her in there until the, I guess you could say until the battle pursued over Bothan, until everything happened after that. But so I thought that was a very fun little arc that kind of changed the pace a little bit and took us somewhere else a little bit, and it still didn't break the plot of the book. It actually contributed to it.
Yep.
So
I agree.
So I really enjoyed that little tidbit.
Mm-hmm.
So.
This part also reminded me how Vision of the Future is a tour through the characters of Timothy Zahn and Stackpole and Aaron Alston.
There you go.
Yeah, those guys really. All those characters that they created shown in this story.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, exactly. And so we do know that the shields are eventually taken down and stuff. Let me see here. Make sure I'm on the right track here. Okay, and we also know that Pellaeon does suspect Moff Dizra, and he realizes that his Vermillion never really made it to his destination, of course, because he met with Leia, and they're like, and so he wants to investigate a little bit more, and so he makes it onto Pellaeon makes it onto Dizra's ship, and without him knowing, they're like, wait, what? He's here, and so they meet inside Dizra's office, and he ends up, Dizra has to go off somewhere else because one of the smugglers was getting a hold of him, whatever. And they find, the data card, the secret data card. So I thought that was very interesting. So Tim, if you want to go ahead and talk a little bit more about that one.
Yeah, they just basically steal it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was awesome.
Yeah.
He's like, screw it. I don't care. I'm stealing it.
Yeah. He's like, okay. And they're like, what about the guards? It's like, forget the guards or whatever.
Yeah.
And what's so funny is that they're like, why did you leave him in there by himself, you fool?
And when Pellaeon tells them like to get out and they don't want to, and he makes them, that was a really good character moment. The guards, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. He's like, I am still in command of this empire here. Mm-hmm. So he uses that. He uses his authority. He's like, until I'm told otherwise. And he's been saying that through this whole duology. Until I'm told otherwise, I'm still in command of the empire. Mm-hmm. And he still uses that. He never backs down, no matter what. He never backs down. And then, so they realize, okay, we better do what he says. And then, after that, he goes and rescues Vermillion, and he still uses that same authority to get him out.
Mm-hmm. Also, along with that authority, I think it's really good to see that Pellaeon is actually thinking more, probably from Thrawn a bit as well, the political side of it, going, well, I haven't heard about Thrawn. I haven't heard that anyone's back, so I still have authority to do the peace treaty.
Yeah.
Nicely. Politicians.
Exactly. So, and I like what Scott Johnson says right here. The Exoticilia Pet Emporium subplot is probably my favorite in the book. Yeah. So that's what we just got done talking about. And that, with Miranda Savage and stuff. Yeah. So, Pellaeon gets in there and he gets the card. He discovers who's really Thrawn, who he really is, that who's leading this scam, to sabotage his peace treaty and all of that. So that was very, very interesting. So Teresa, go ahead and if you want to add to that.
Girl, how can I add to that?
If there's anything else you want to add to that.
No, I just love it. I almost felt at this point that, for frack's sake, how many more characters can we bring in here? And I'm feeling lost almost, but I enjoy these characters so much. I think I can forgive him.
And I think that's why it's 500 pages as well.
It was almost exactly. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. It's a perfect book.
If you think there's a lot of characters in this, you should read a David Weber Honorverse book. He has like so many characters in those books. It's crazy.
Oh wow. Yeah. Yeah. And so basically, let's go ahead and get back to Luke and Mara. And so we're gonna get back to that, and then we're gonna jump back into some of the, ending of this. So we get Luke and Mara, they get out, they sabotage the hangar. And I think Luke is injured by then, and he, puts himself in a force trance inside the ship while they, recuperate and plan what they want to do next. And then Mara realized, like, well, if I'm going to need to become a Jedi, I need to sacrifice something. And she does. And we all know that Mara was always very independent, and that all she cared about, and I'm not trying to make her sound like a, like a bitch or anything, is that it was all about herself and her ship. That she always found a way to escape, and her ship was basically her freedom. Even with Talon Karrde, she had her own ship, she, whatever. And she sacrifices that. So Teresa, I'm going to have you go again first, and I'll go around the horn with you guys. What do you think about that scenario with, her deciding to sacrifice her ship, and then Luke waking up, finding out what happened, and then he sits on, I guess you could say, the edge of the bluff, watching everything go down, the ship wrecking into the Hand of Thrawn, the fortress. So if you want to share a little bit about that.
Oh, for sure. And when she makes that decision, it wasn't like she thought, oh, well, what I give up, like it's Lent or something. It was a situation of where they had to stop what was going on. And that was the only way she could see that it could be done. But as she did so, and as she went through that decision, that's when she realized, this is my test. This is what's going to make me a Jedi.
Yeah.
And she does it. But the way that it devastates her. And I like the way we see it through Luke's eyes. He's just chatting, and he's like, Mara's being all kind of weird. Like something's going on here, because it's just a little darker or something. And he's like, Mara, what did you do? And then she's trying to hold back tears, and then she just finally cries, weeping over her ship. And as it comes and it crashes in, and everything that had been her life up to this point is crashing, but it's also being reborn. We're seeing that in this whole book. This is, to me, almost as important as what comes later in that scene, because as she's mourning, Luke is there holding her, and they hold each other tighter and tighter. And it's not just a shipper here. It's not just Days of Our Life School that makes me like it. It's more than that, because what you're seeing is two souls that are saying goodbye to what they were, because Luke has also had to say goodbye to what he had been over the past 10, 15 years. He had been a little bit on the wrong track, and they both needed to be reborn, if you will, and the symbolism of the fire and all that kind of stuff. And as they hold each other, and they're realizing that's their rebirth, as their souls are starting to become one, or they're realizing that is what's really going on.
And it's also, I think that will be the first time she's actually ever been really vulnerable with Luke.
Yeah.
And possibly with anybody. As far as we know, she's never since she was a child.
So that definitely strengthens their bond as well.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking of like, oh man, how I would imagine doing it visually. It's so good.
Oh my gosh. If we could somehow take back the clock and have them film it like with the real actors and properly do it, it would be magnificent.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
That
So,
happens.
Callum, so go ahead and give your input on that scenario, what you thought, like how maybe if it touched you anyway, or with her transformation of like, sacrificing something to become a Jedi.
Oh yeah, I think it's also sacrificing something to be moving forward with Luke more as well, because she sacrificed her security.
Yeah.
And from her old life and going, I'm not independent anymore. Now I'm relying on Luke even more. And I'm moving forward in that way. And so it's a great moment and definitely very emotional. And as you're reading it, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
then it's that whole moment of like, things have been leading up to this moment where she's going to open up to Luke and she's going to let go of her old life. And now she's finally done it. And then it leads even more weight to what happens later, because the earlier moment when she didn't quite understand Luke and she couldn't hear him and stuff, it definitely is just that barrier that breaks down for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. And Tim, if you want to go ahead and expand on that, like with what it made you feel or what you thought about that with her transformation, because we knew Luke's transformation was his redeeming his father and not giving into the Emperor by, throwing his saber down and stuff like that. So this is kind of comparable to where she's given away her vulnerability, or she's given away her safety to be more vulnerable.
Yeah.
So,
And, the ship was just a ship. So I think it was kind of like an allegory for, what she was really giving up was with what you just said. So, come on, it's just a ship, and it's not like the Millennium Falcon is to Han. I think it was more just an allegory for her vulnerability and all that. She was giving that up. But what I thought of with the ship was Star Trek 3, when the Enterprise is coming down through the atmosphere. I don't know what it is with all the Star Trek references.
I know, I'm like, you're like seeing the connections there, and I think that's very interesting that, maybe if it was.
Well, I know Zahn's a Star Trek fan, so.
Yeah. So I'm just enjoying it. Like I said, I've grown to, I grew up a little bit with Star Trek. I steered more towards Star Wars. So I like to hear the interesting comparisons between franchises. So.
Yeah, but I think that's what it was. I think it was more of there's a ship coming down and I'm giving up my ship. But I even think, not just to us, the reader, but I think even to her, when she's saying this, she's not really talking about the ship, right? She's talking about herself. Like she's given up who she was to become something better and different. So
yeah, exactly. And it just gives me chills to think about that, because, we see this woman who is very strong and capable, but then we find out like she does that because she doesn't want to be vulnerable. She doesn't want to give up her vulnerability and stuff. And so that's like, again, that's a great transformation right there, for herself. And it didn't even have to do with Luke at all. It had to do with herself.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was, really well played for Zahn to, touch it on that way.
Yep.
For her character, and then, so let's go ahead and, move forward a little bit. So they
pardon me, Laura, do you mind if I just want to make one more point to tag team along with what you just said about how she had to do it for herself? I think that Zahn is also laying out a great universal truth that before you can truly love, before you can truly have your partner, your soulmate, you have to be at peace with yourself, for yourself, with yourself. Not like what Anakin did, for example, where he looked to her to make him happy, so that she had to reach that point before she could. And I think that there's wisdom in that, because it's true.
Sure.
Yeah, and she got rid of attachment. If you think about that, she got rid of attachment. Because the ship was kind of an attachment to her as well. I mean, it didn't make her who she was, but she was attached to it as a vehicle of escaping.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and attached to her security, as I mentioned before, and all that.
Exactly. So I thought that was really, really interesting on top of that. So we have them, of course, we have them in their discovering, the Spa-RT cylinders with Thrawn in them and all that. We already, touch bases on that. And so now they're leaving and trying to escape. And I know we really didn't touch about where, you know, Luke rescues her from Parak and them, whatever. I mean, it's so hard to cover every single thing in the book.
Yeah, it was an action scene, you know, pretty interesting.
Yeah, so like I said, everybody in the chat, everybody that's listening, you know, pick up the book and reread it if you haven't visited in a while. It's a very good read. And so we have, you know, them escaping, and, you know, there's a big old lake. So we know that there's a big old lake that, you know, it's right next to and stuff. And because I forgot, how did they breach the lake to when water started coming through? They were cutting through something, trying to escape, right?
No,
she taught him the certain type of cut to weaken the structure.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about when they started, when the lake was starting to break through into Thrawn's room there. I forgot what it was, what happened where the lake started breaching into the facility. I don't remember it.
I don't remember either.
Okay.
Well, that's obviously not a memorable part.
Yeah. Who cares how the hell they got there?
So just, no matter what, you know, the lake that they're next to started breaching, and it breached into the facility where Thrawn, you know, where Thrawn would, his, you know, Sparty cylinders are in and stuff like that. And so they're trying to escape, and that water's flooding in so quick that it traps them inside. And, you know, Luke is trying, you know, desperately to cut through the stone because they're inside the fortress, which is also part of like the underground and part of the by the lake and stuff like that. And, you know, they're realizing that they may not live. And they're realizing they may not escape and stuff. And we already seen their force bond, and we already seen, you know, her go through her transformation and stuff. And so I'm going to get to this now, where Teresa's been waiting for the moment she's been waiting for. And they're trying to figure out how to cut through and create more holes for the water to drain differently. And just like Kellum says, you know, she was trained basically in little techniques that Luke has never been trained with, you know, on, you know, causing, you know, how to cut, slice, or whatever. And we know that they were soon losing oxygen and all this, and he ends up proposing to her. So Teresa, go ahead. I'm going to have you go first on that scene.
Well, I mean, yeah, they start to become endangered, you know, and they start to fight, and then they end up like back to back, and it's like they become one weapon with each other through the force and through what they're doing. And it's like they can see each other, they can see each other's mind, they can see what they're thinking. They're becoming like literally one human being, and
the two become one.
But I mean, and just how surprised they were, and then just how badass they were too. I'm sorry, when they were doing this. Sorry, I dropped my mic. I was so excited. Yeah, because they, well, you know what I mean. I'm just saying that this is what is a well-crafted romance. You know, it was developed. It didn't start as stupid stuff. It wasn't fluff, and it was real. And so as they're doing that, I mean, I'm just seeing here. It was just unbelievable, and it was so intense that, to be honest, the only thing that Luke could say after that is, "Will you marry me?"
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't even say "I love you." They didn't say anything.
In his farm boy awkwardness.
Yeah, well, because he's like, "That was special," and she's like, "How special?" And he's like, "Darn it, you're not going to make this easy on me." And then he just blurts it out.
Yeah, exactly. She's like, "Quit beating around the bush. What are you talking about?" You know, and I thought that was a really, really great scene. You know, even though it did have a bit awkwardness, it kind of blend back to like his father's awkwardness with Padme in a sense, you know, because They never, well, especially with Anakin, they never, experienced any kind of like courtship or flirtation. They never went through that kind of arc. Maybe Luke a little bit more than his father, but it kind of lent back to that awkwardness, I guess you can say. And what I found funny, and I'm going to get to you, Callum, on this, and you can expand a little bit more on this whole scenario, is he sent her down to do the crosshatch cut for the water to start leaking out. And, that's when Luke starts panicking. You're like, am I going to lose her? And blah, blah, blah. And she comes up because of their force bond, is like, don't you ever think, that it's that, you can't love me just because you think you're going to lose me kind of deal. I'm like paraphrasing right now. So she scolds him on that. So Callum, if you want to expand on all that whole situation of the proposal and their interaction during that time.
Yeah, I mean, it shows how deep their bond went, that they could just read each other's moods so much that she could go, I know what you're thinking.
Yeah.
And so I think with Scott saying maybe the part was a bit longer than it needed to be, I think for me, it was about right, because you want to sit longer in that moment because then you really feel what they're feeling.
Yeah.
Rather than just going, oh yeah, now it's done, sort of, I wanted a little bit more of that. And so, it's definitely a thing of like, once he has something, that's his fear of losing it, which also would relate back to Anakin.
Yeah.
In that moment. It's because Anakin fears losing Padme, and just immediately afterwards, there's a parallel, even though Phantom Menace was in production at the time, but it wasn't released.
Yeah.
It's a great parallel to the story that I'm sure George would have maybe had a bit of a hand in mentioning, this sort of will parallel, or maybe even George Lucas heard the idea, went past his table and he went, oh great, I can line it up a bit.
Yeah. I think it's a great parallel, like you said, because Anakin didn't want to lose Padme, but see, Luke didn't want to love because he didn't want to hurt them if it goes dark and stuff. So that's a great parallel with that. Tim, go ahead and expand on that a little bit more.
Rhymes everywhere.
Well, this might be a good point to read that passage I was talking about in the private chat.
Okay, go ahead.
So this is, toward the end of the book, and there's something really cool, I think, in here. But she's basically, just giving him a dose of reality here. And I don't think he likes it at first, but then I think she convinces him it's the truth. But yeah, it's not too long, but let me just read this. Here we go. And this starts out with her. Let me guess, she said, the sarcasm gone from her voice again. Life as a Jedi has been a lot foggier than you ever expected it to be. You've had trouble understanding what you're supposed to do or how you're supposed to behave. You've been gaining tremendous power in the Force, but more often than not, you've been paralyzed with fear that you're going to use it the wrong way. Am I getting warm? Luke stared at her. Yes, he said, not quite believing it. How had she known? That's it exactly. And yet, she continued, sometime in the past couple of months, things have suddenly become clearer. Not that you've had any great lightning bolt insights, but a lot of the hesitation has disappeared and you found it easier to stay on what seems in hindsight to have been the right path. Right again, Luke said, though there have also been one or two pretty impressive revelations, he added, thinking back. The vision on Tirfan that got me in touch with Karrde, just in time to hear about you being trapped here for one. He eyed her closely. You know what's been going on? Yes, it's been slightly more visible than blindingly obvious, she said dryly. Certainly to me, probably to Leia and Corran and some of your other Jedi students too, possibly to everyone else in the New Republic. Oh, thank you, Luke said, trying to match her tone and not entirely succeeding. That makes me feel so much better. Good, it was supposed to. Mara took a deep breath and Luke could sense her reluctance. Look, you're the one in the middle of this. You're the one who has to make the final call on what's going on. But if you want my reading, it all started with that little jaunt you took out to Biss about 9 years ago, where you faced whatever it was you faced out there. Luke shivered, the reborn emperor, or whatever, Mara said with an odd touch of impatience. Personally, I'm not convinced it was him. So that's an awesome line, but that's beside the point. The point that you decided, stupidly and rather arrogantly, in my opinion, that the best way to stop him would be for you to pretend to join up and let him teach you some of his dark side techniques. So not only is it her, just giving him a dose of reality, but that's Zahn basically saying he didn't like that story. So,
but it is funny how his reluctance to work with Tom Veitch and that at the time, and then finally he goes, "Okay, now I'll reference it."
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, but not like in a positive way. It's more like that was it. It didn't make any sense. That's basically what he's saying there.
Yeah.
Because I've never been a big fan of Dark Empire myself.
Yeah, Mara wouldn't believe it because she never heard the voice of the Emperor again.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's kind of their dynamic. Like, he needs her. He needs someone to just tell him the truth. So
exactly. And his sister wasn't going to do it. No one was going to do it. And she was the one that was the sound of reason for him as well. And so I like how they expanded on that. So let's go ahead and start wrapping this up. So we they end up destroying the fortress, and basically R2-D2 downloads the document, and the document also is given. I think it doesn't really say that Karrde gave them the document, but then in the Reader's Companion, it does say that he gave him the document. But so far, they've got different sources of the documents that were given in different ways or whatever. And so we get to see Leia, the peace treaty, and being done. And and it was what is sad, and this goes back to what you said earlier, is that Leia still gets shoved to the background on this because she's not the one that's doing the treaty. It's Gaverson and Pellaeon, which should be really her in a sense, because she's been in there longer and stuff. So she kind of got pushed back in a sense. And I thought that was kind of sad. Even Han brings it up, that should be you up there. And she's like, no, that's okay. So she's being diplomatic about it. And, then he tells him, she's crying a little bit. And he's like, why are you crying? And she's like, she's like, this is what I've always wanted, and then she also describes, the top things in her life. And, they kind of have their fun little, relationship banter there. So we finally have the peace treaty going on. And, it kind of concludes the novel. A lot had to happen for them to get there. And we also know that, and I don't really want to skip this, so I'm going to go back to it a little bit, is about Pellaeon confronting Dizra and them.
Yep.
That's a major point that I don't want to miss. And so I'm going to back up a little bit here. And so he goes and, he basically talks to Thrawn with the real name Flem, and Dizra losing it, and Tyr's losing it because he finds out that he's really, I think he already knew he was a clone, but no one else really did. And he's like, I'm the best, I'm the elite. And Thrawn made me who I am, and we were going to be one of his weapons, kind of deal. So Tim, go ahead and expound on that scene a little bit more. That
was on the Star Destroyer, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, it was awesome. I don't remember the exact dialogue or anything, but it's something you wanted to see because all three of those guys were douchebags in their own way.
Yeah.
So he comes in and he's like, I don't know, again, the exact dialogue, but he's like, I served under him for however many couple of years and you're not him. So who the hell are you? So
exactly.
That was badass.
Power move by Pellaeon though.
Yeah. And,
exactly.
and that character, he's introduced as the Watson to Holmes and heir to the Empire, and by now he's like in the real world to us and in the story, he's developed so far, and he's like his own person and great character. And for another almost 10 years in Expanded Universe, he develops even further. So what a great character!
Legacy of the Force. Yeah, so he makes it all the way into Legacy of the Force.
And the same thing happens. The same thing happens in Sherlock Holmes to Watson. He kind of becomes his own guy in the later stories. So I really like that parallel.
Exactly. So Cal, go ahead and expand what you like any insights or what you thought about that whole scenario between Pellaeon confronting the Moff Dizra and their scam.
Oh, I just thought it was an absolute great moment when he just went straight to them and said, well, Thrawn's dead. I saw it with my own eyes. And everyone was like,
Damn. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, I was there, damn it, I seen it, kind of deal. Yeah, and so that, I thought that was a fun part. That was a fun arc because we got to see the conclusion of Pellaeon, his doubt and going into his investigation, and listening to his instincts and his intuition about the whole scenario and stuff, and using his I guess you could say his pull as the Grand Admiral of the time, or as the leader of the Empire, to basically do his investigation and stuff. So Teresa Martin, what did you think about that little scenario? Well, I wouldn't say it's little, but yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was just badass, of course, because Pellaeon has become in his own right. And someone said, how could you disrespect Thrawn like this? And he says, oh, on the contrary, I have the utmost respect for Grand Admiral Thrawn. Like, this ain't him. It was badass and loads of fun. And I just love the way he just owns them. He just wipes the floor with them. It's great.
Yeah.
It's also funny how they had a guy with makeup on instead of actually having one of the clones of Thrawn.
Well, they didn't know that they were cloning him.
But it's like the actual clones existed, but it's funny that they didn't realize and went, oh yeah, we'll do a guy up in makeup.
Exactly. You would think that if and maybe this is maybe an error on Zahn himself when he wrote the novel, but you would think that if they pulled up all of Thrawn's documents and stuff, that with all the evidence of what he's doing, his plans of making the Empire great again, I guess you can say. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to put any politics in that. That's just how it came out. That you would think that they would see that there would be clones as a part of the of his plans, unless that was so secret that was one thing that was not put into the plans, where only those who were in charge of the fortress, like Prak and them, knew about it.
Yeah, I think it's because it was Thrawn's plan that he kept under wraps more. It wasn't part of the main Imperial system, and so it was separate.
Yeah. And so it makes you kind of wonder a little bit, they never expanded on him, why it wasn't, that was one thing that wasn't covered or anything like that. So you have to think maybe that was more of the more top secret, or maybe it was Prak and them that decided to do the cloning. Who knows?
And you can infer a bit about going, well, he obviously kept that quite separate to the main documentation and all that. Yeah. Because it was his secret plan with the chest to do everything.
Exactly. And so again, let's come to the conclusion here. So, they end up getting the documents, peace end up happen. We still have the fortress there, which I don't think they've ever used it other than, or referred back to it other than Survivor's Quest. I am not sure. Can you?
I think you're right. I think you're right.
Okay. And so, but Luke and Leia, I keep on saying Luke and Leia. Luke and Mara are the ones that kept Mitt'raw'nuruodo a secret, that only the topmost officials knew what happened, other than some things that happened inside the Hand of Thrawn. So I thought that was very interesting, because then it gives them leeway of keeping it secret and it's not coming back in any of the lore as well. So we'll go around the horn. I'm gonna start with Teresa first. So with overall on this novel, what did you think about it? Like, you don't have to give a rating system, but you can if you want to. And if there's anything else you want to cover that we haven't covered or add to.
For sure. It's a great conclusion to the Bantam era. It's a great bookend to, I think, what was begun in Heir to the Empire, and not just the whole Luke Mara thing, which is everything on this planet, but it's also bringing to an end from what Luke was saying when he saw the Force ghost of Ben for the last time in Heir to the Empire. He just was like, he wasn't sure and all that. And then Obi-Wan was like, this is the beginning of the new. And then there was that vision of the future that Mara gets. It was a perfect ending to what overall objectively can be seen as some really, really fun, deep Star Wars in the 90s. And of course, we all know it only got better after that.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, I usually have a information put up on the screen, like with the date that it came out, the author, the timeline. So it happened in 19 ABY for those. And I usually have also, the worlds visited and the main characters on this. I usually have that on display, but I didn't do it this time. Callum, do you go ahead and give your conclusion, your rating, or whatever, and anything else you want to touch bases on for that?
Yeah, I'm not too keen on ratings because I can never go, oh, yeah. I can decide on it because it'll always change as well as I read more. But I very much agree with Teresa. It's a brilliant ending to the Bantam era, and the whole way that it incorporates so many of the main important people that were in the Bantam era is really what ties it all together and ends it really well. Okay. And I think that especially when you think of the story started with Luke in the original Star Wars movie, and now we see Luke growing so much throughout the whole time between that and Vision of the Future. It's amazing to see that this is what Star Wars has become, especially after the old Marvel comics and some of the earlier books feeling out and not really knowing exactly what Star Wars would become, and then it growing into its own and having its own feel, its own continuity as well, and how they improved on that since Heir to the Empire. It's amazing to see the journey that it went along. If you read through all of the EU from release order. So, that's really great.
Yeah. All right. So, Tim, so go ahead and give your conclusion. Anything else you wanted to share? And if you rate the books are, 10 on, 1 through 10, you can go ahead and give your rating.
Yeah. So what I always do is I give a rating for whatever the production is among media overall, and then just among Star Wars books. So I'd say among media overall, I would give it pretty high because I think it's a great book. I enjoy it more than I enjoy a lot of television shows and other books and comics. I give it like a 9 out of 10.
Okay.
And when it comes to Star Wars books, it's in the top tier, probably like a 9.5 out of 10. There's not very many Star Wars books that are as good as this. I'd say I have a lot that are tied at 9.5 because I don't think anything's perfect. I don't think I've ever given anything a 10. So I probably have about 8 books that I'd give a 9.5 from both, the Bantam era and Del Rey era. So great, fantastic book. It never really bored me. Even some of the good Star Wars books, there's certain angles in the books that just every time we go to those characters, I'm like, oh man, I can't wait to get back to the other characters. I really don't have this in this book. So good stuff.
Yeah. All right, that's fair enough. And so people who are listening, the next, continuity, and I use comics, what have you, whatever, is it Union. So after, this proposal, if you're really into Mara and Luke, that's a great comic. Some have said it's cheesy or whatever. I think it's fun. So I would check that out afterwards. And for myself, I love this read. I always go back to the Hand of Thrawn. I've had people tell me it's too political for them. I think that it had to be for the type of writing and plot it was made under. And it expanded more on that time frame and, and revisiting like the empire, still wanting to maintain control of the galaxy and also leading up to a peace treaty. We needed to see something like that. Really, we did. We need to have a conclusion.
And especially probably because George knew the prequel's going to be a bit more political as far as everything that goes on and how the world's structured. I think even in the X-Wing series, you get a little bit of going,
I love it.
New Republic, they need to become more political. It really shows that sort of thing as well.
I'm a junkie for that stuff. I love Cloak of Deception. I loved those scenes in Phantom Menace. I love everything about Palpatine. I think he's he's probably tied for I don't want to say my favorite Star Wars character, but who I think is the best Star Wars character. I think there's a difference there. I love the political stuff in Star Wars. It's what makes it interesting.
Yeah.
So
it goes beyond just having a soap opera in space kind of deal. It gives more depth into the plots and stuff. And I agree, Palpatine or Sidious, he was the major psychological manipulator through everything.
Well, we could have a 3-hour stream on him alone, but just the way
Exactly.
he's like, oh, I'm this nice guy, and then he turns around and he's an evil, terrible guy, But Wobot Yokri with great interest, and all that stuff. It's just so wonderful. Love the character.
Yeah, he even used the Mr. Nice Guy fatherly figure to mimic Anakin.
Yeah. He was
I
like
need your help, son.
Yeah.
I think also it's interesting we have a different opinion in the comments with Scott saying that he thought it was more average.
Oh, okay.
But I think when you're saying Dizra and the rest were weak villains, I almost think that the fear of Thrawn was more of the villain than themselves.
Yeah.
And so that whole Hand of Thrawn part was, I'd say, more of the villain than Dizra and the Moffs trying to do their own thing.
Yeah, they were the more or less the antagonists to, to the peace treaty, whereas we've seen a bigger picture of these guys who are more or less trying to bring Thrawn back to take over the galaxy. So, but even though it happened, and Luke and Mara basically, foiled their plans. So I thought that was really interesting. And
also, in a way, thinking of the warlords that all sprang up after Palpatine's death. That's the last sort of representation of the warlords that are still trying to do one or two things and have splinters in the Empire, but they really can't anymore. And that's why they're sort of weak villains as well, because the warlords just have lost power and they don't really have the resources and the know-how to be able to actually be great contenders.
Yeah. And that's where I got Pellaeon, like, you know what, we had enough, we need to have peace. So that's where I got that from, because they have no more push and pull with a lot of things and stuff. All right, so we're coming up a little over 2 hours now. So our next book is that we're gonna expand on, and it's gonna be Darth Maul, Shadow Hunter. So that's what everybody voted on in Twitter. So that's what we'll be covering. And, if anybody on the panel wants to return for that, you're more than welcome. I will announce it's going to be either 4 to 6 weeks, but I'll announce the date when once I get that figured out and look at my calendar. And I hear that's a really fun and very well-liked Darth Maul novel.
Yeah.
So
and ties into
I have the hardcover
quite well.
Yeah, and I never was a big Darth Maul fan, so I honestly have to read it. I haven't read it yet, so I'll be brand new to this one. So I'm gonna.
I'll be brand new to it as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've never.
You get ready for a treat, because Luceno, when he wrote Darth Plagueis, he tied it and Cloak of Deception into it. It's all connected. Good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm told too. And I don't doubt that. I just never was a huge Darth Maul fan. So I just kind of went around that book. So
I definitely don't like Darth Maul from Clone Wars. I mean,
yeah. Oh no, I dislike him from that. And stuff. So, and so I'm excited to explore that and, and see how I feel about him afterwards, so stay tuned. I will announce the dates. Anybody on this panel who wants to be on there to discuss in depth the novel and stuff, you're more than welcome to. And so let's go ahead and start closing out. Teresa, where can we find you at? So go ahead and plug your information.
Oh, you can find me at Miss Martin Muses here on Twitter. YouTube, where I talk about what makes me laugh, makes me cry, makes me happy, makes me sad, or just really ticks me off. And on Twitter, Teresa2_Martin. I'm also part of the Sporking A Song of Ice and Fire book club, which is every Monday at 7:30 Eastern. So you can also find me there.
All right. And so you guys, please go, if you haven't had a chance to go, please subscribe to Miss Martin Muses, and you will see her, like she said, on various other channels too. And she is a big EU fan, and she has a lot of great insight as well. And then, so Callum, go ahead and tell us where we can find you.
Oh, you can find me at, I think Soul Assassin put the link there earlier, but youtube.com/c/Callum Johns.
Yeah.
That's what I made my link. And I've been on a break a bit, and it was hard. Got busy, so I didn't do as many videos. But the last thing I did was actually put up a video of me playing Echoes of Vengeance, which is the latest story update for SWTOR.
Okay.
And so that's me giving my thoughts of it throughout. And it is new expanded universe, so that's always worth checking out, I think.
Okay.
As well as I have some things in the works for videos that someone need to edit and someone still need to record. But now I'm going to start my normal schedule. That'll start coming out now. So that'll be good.
Yes, and he has some great EU content as well. So please go, and if you haven't had a chance to, go subscribe and find him on Twitter as well. So again, knowledgeable with the EU as well. And I've always looked up to him for some, information, especially about games, because I've never been. I was a gamer growing up, and then I quit it for dance and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
I do find it interesting because among the EU channels, there are not many that do the games and the books and everything. So
no, there's not, and so
as well.
Yeah, so I appreciate that so much. I am getting into Dark Forces right now, so I'm having fun with that. So thank you so much for coming on my channel. I appreciate you.
Enjoy the sword level.
Yeah. And then Tim, go ahead and let us know where we can find you.
Yeah, Mr. Soul Assassin put my link in the chat.
Yes.
My channel is Open Airlock Policy. You see on my name there. I have a series of mini documentaries called Expanded University. The most recent one I did was on anti-alien bigotry in the Empire, and evidence from the movies, books, everything else. I only cover pre-Disney continuity. I'm one of those Disney haters, just putting it out there so so you don't get surprised.
They don't get triggered.
Yeah, and I talk about other stuff too. I did a Gina Carano video 3 days before the drama started, so that was quite timely, and I'm getting nice views on it because of the algorithm. And every other Friday, I have my live stream around 11 o'clock Central. After Friday Night Heights is over, it's called The Spacing. Both of the two ladies here have been on the show, so amongst a lot of other awesome people. And yeah, that's kind of what I do, and I'm having fun doing it. I've been doing this for 6 months now, so
yeah.
Good.
Yeah,
and also out of interest, I am streaming to Twitch as well, other video games as well as Star Wars. So you can find that at twitch.tv/Callum's Cantina.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So you guys check that out. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So those in the chat, thank you guys for coming out. You guys are amazing for the support that you lend, especially now when we need to really be put in focus on the original EU. And showing what we love, showing Disney, Lucasfilm where our love is with Star Wars. And that's my mission of my channel. So again, you can find me here, and you can find me on Twitter. And I compare and contrast between the two lores. And I find that pisses off people a lot, but I don't care.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
I mean, someone has to do it, right?
Yeah, someone has to do it, and it's me. And I find it very interesting, seeing things that maybe are similar, but there's a lot of difference. And yes, Disney in themselves has every right to reinvent the lore, but when it comes to bastardizing, anything that's from the original lore to put in theirs, I don't really care for. It destroys.
There's other misunderstandings that happen as well. Like if they say people coming, Revan's canon because he's got a reference in a source book. It's like, no, they made the name canon for a squadron, but that doesn't mean that they made the character a Revan character in their timeline or anything like that. So yeah,
exactly. People confuse that, and what I found before I end this now, I'm just going to put my little tidbits in here. If you were pissed off about how they portrayed Luke in The Last Jedi and even in their continuity with the books and comics and stuff like that, if you're pissed off about that, but are okay for example, Darth Talon coming in a timeline where she doesn't even belong, and you're okay with that, I think you need to relook and evaluate what you're really mad at and what you will accept.
Yeah.
Because they're still bastardizing characters.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't be okay, for one and not the other.
Yeah.
So, and that's my point with my compare and contrast at times as well.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead. Laura.
They have the same name, but they're not the same character, basically.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
And
in name only.
In name only. So thank you again for everybody coming in and listening to this review.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you for my panel for coming in. I just love geeking out on Star Wars, the novels, all of that. It's so much fun. I could have this go on for another 2 hours, but I have things to do myself. So again, you can find me on Twitter and on my channel here. Become a member. It's fun. You can choose your status as Master, Jedi Knight, or Padawan, and everything that you do, helps me purchase new content to review and stuff, because I haven't collected all the comics yet or anything, it helps expands the channel. It goes towards the channel. So thank you again to my panel and the chat, and may the force be with you.
May the force be with you.